Wellness Show, episode 79.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. Welcome to the Wellness Show, and today we're going to talk about engaged shamanism, and I'm excited to have Ahdi with me. And in this time of great mystery, as the planet goes through lots of change and transformation, I am really gifted to know that shamanism is a key aspect of who I am. It helps me understand the mysteries of life, to understand the shadow world and the other parts of myself that I wouldn't really understand unless I had some shamanistic training myself. It's always exciting to me to talk to other shamans that are on their own path and how did they arrive at that path. So that's the first question, Adhi. Adhi Two Owls, how did you become a shaman? What led you to this path?
What got me here? Oh my goodness, some pushing and some shoving, I think. I think I was aware of things when I was young, when I was a child, and I think that began where this odyssey began. I was always into nature. I was always into feeling things. I knew there was something about trees and the world around me that was vibrant and alive. And I don't think anyone, the adults in my life, had a way of sort of explaining that. So for me, my only logical way to sort of channel that was into the art world. So that's basically where my career choices went, was towards fine art, painting and sculpture. And went to the best art school in the country at that time, and then it began to just sort of not work for me. I was having experiences, and my art was not did not give me the answer to the fulfillment I need. So I sort of left the art world and sort of went into this kind of dark night of the soul kind of thing throughout most of my 20s after that, and then around time I was 29 is when my life began to slowly unravel, which is part of the journey of the shaman or the hero, if you follow Joseph Campbell's work. So there was this unraveling of my life, and I moved back to Connecticut, and that began my odyssey of trying to figure out why I was here on the planet. And I didn't call it shamanism for a long time because that wasn't a word really. That was, it was just, this is what I was doing. So I was studying sacred objects because I find them interesting, and as an artist, I wanted to understand why they worked. So I would go to museums, and I would study stuff, and I would make things, I'd take things apart. So I was going through this process of just discovery. And it was during that time that I began to meet teachers, and I met a teacher who basically led me on my path to basically be someone who carries the rattle, which is what I do. So if you ask me what I do, I shake the rattle. And I'm a repository of rattle songs and rattle rhythms and different types of rattles and stuff. So I have this archive of work that I do. And as my teacher told me, drumming puts you in your body, puts you inside yourself. And that's how you have medicine done on you. And the rattle is what does the medicine. So the two of them actually work together. But my focus has been primarily the rattle and working with it. And it's never been a straight road. I think that's,
Right.
It's kind of like a pinball machine, actually. You kind of go in one direction, then you bounce into another direction. And it's kind of on a need-to-know basis. The universe is, at least with me, it's always on a need-to-know basis. And they have to sort of ask the question, well, am I going to get hurt? And they usually say, nah, not really. So,
Yeah, the question that I asked previously was, do you need to have a crisis in order to become a shaman? Like, do you need to go through a dark night of the soul, or do you need to have your world that you're in shattered in some way, or do you need that to awaken?
I think so. I really do. I think it's part of, we're conditioned in a certain way to live within our societal norms. And when we're children, we're allowed to move into this place of dreams and imagination and all of that. And then as we become adults, that gets squished into this other place. And I think it's through the process of being shaken up, broken up out of this norm, that we begin to see that there's something else outside there. And that can be a religious epiphany, or it can be just an awakening. But suddenly we realize that everything around us isn't what it seems to be. Of course, there's the illness or trauma or tragedy or whatever that wakes us up. But then there's also the ethnobotanicals, which are used sometimes when people are stuck and they can't move forward. And I'm not an advocate for those, in essence, because I think we can actually do it through our own experience. But I know they exist, and if they're used properly, they are very effective for those that need that kind of meaningful experience. But I think there has to be something that wakes us up, that takes us out of our normal idea of how the world works, and it's different for everybody. So,
yeah. So this awakening to the greater knowingness that we're part of the infinite all, and that even the animals and the trees and the plants all speak to us, is a very powerful way to be in the world. I'm understanding, if maybe correctly or incorrectly, that for you this comes and goes. You say that it's a bit like a pinball machine. And did you mean the pinball machine in the sense that you're led this way and then all of a sudden you're led a different way? Is that what you're meaning about the pinball?
Yeah, I think so. It's like, I think as a human, and I'm a human with all of my humanly faults, I'd like to be able to control things, and I know I can't. And I delude myself into thinking I can. I think, oh, I know where this is going. I see where this is going, and it's not going that way. I think that's kind of the interesting thing about being a shaman. So we're not sacred or holy people. We're just people. We make a contract with the universe to bring people, places, and things together, to work together. And that's it has its way.
Yeah, it has its way with you and with other people. So what is the role of the shaman in today's society? What do you see that role as being?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's pointing out the obvious, being able to sort of connect the dots for people. Telling people there's a conversation going on in the world with the trees and the nature and all of that, and that we need to be a part of it. That part of all the things that we see in the world right now with our fingerprint on it, like our use of fossil fuels or whatever. One wants to show that this human thing. Part of it is we've disconnected from this conversation, and that's created an imbalance. And
so you're a reconnector, sort of to the reconnector to the fabric of life, to revitalize people.
Yeah, and I think part of that, though, is it's not just reconnection. I think there's a way in which self-hatred is sort of embodied in that. We, as human beings, I think, hate ourselves because we see what we're doing, and we feel that we are undeserving of being part of this conversation. So part of it also is to heal that guilt, heal that wound, that self-inflicted wound that we carry, and how we've treated the planet, each other, and because if we can't forgive ourselves, if we can't heal ourselves, even if we participate in the conversation, we still feel less than. So the idea is to have it's a coming together of equals. So part of that is figuring out how to bring it all together.
How did we come to this lesser than feeling? I mean, it's just because of our culture, or I'm not sure. How did that happen? I mean, a Christian.
I think
a Christian would say, well, you're born with this original sin or something, as maybe that being trying to be an explanation of where is this guilt coming from? Can you?
I think that's part of it. I think the Western spiritual tradition has always, in some way, said that you are not good enough, no matter what you do. Only a few will ever be good enough, and because you are never good enough, you'll never know. You'll never have a direct divine connection to anything. So, and if you're a woman, it's even more so. But I mean, it's been conditioned in us. And we know from studying the protein sequences in our DNA that if we learn something enough, we actually embody that. It becomes who we are. It becomes part of our structure. So to unlearn that is not just a thought process. It's an actual, changing chemistry, changing our body, changing our whole sort of dynamic, which is also where the whole concept of, doing something for the next 7 generations. Like when we do something, we embody that change within us. So if we, give birth, that is carried out in our children and our grandchildren. So, and that also loops back to when we do healing work, or like removing like an ancestral curse or an ancestral trauma. It usually leads back to something that happened in our family line.
So so then, would you say then ritual or shamanistic ritual then is part of that connecting to that divinity within, or that greater sense, or that connection, and that's what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, part of it is showing that we're all pieces to the puzzle, and
Right.
each piece is as valuable as the next. It's like nobody has hierarchy over the other. I think that's part of the mistake religion gives us, is that it says that there's a hierarchy, and in shamanism there really isn't.
Right.
We recognize, and there's these wonderful stories about the shaman will shapeshift into a bee to sting the hand of the god so it'll drop something so that humanity can have this thing that God has jealously possessed. So we know that shamans aren't afraid of the gods. They aren't afraid of doing what needs to be done, because they see everything as being part of the greater picture.
So when you call yourself, that your primary tool is the rattle, and having experienced that with you, it was really quite amazing. It is transformative. There's something about that steady beat of the rattle, and actually practicing that and learning how to do that. I mean, it's not something that comes easily or naturally, to keep that rhythm, to keep that beat. It's like the continual heartbeat. It's just like it goes on and on and on. It allows you then, if I'm understanding correctly, to actually enter into dropping your consciousness and going into, well, some people would call it trance, or into altered states, or becoming who we truly are, or however we want to describe it. Why the rattle? How did that come into your life?
It was where my teachers pointed me. That was the direction they pointed me. And so, when I was working with my first teacher, one day out of the blue, because really we didn't talk about like anything sort of formal. I just sort of was coming to her house and doing yard work for her, and we were doing this, getting to know each other kind of thing. And then one day out of the blue, she sort of said to me, I want you to come in a couple weeks, and I want you to make a rawhide rattle. And I was kind of like, okay, where do I get rawhide? And she said, I don't know, that's your world, you figure it out. And I said, okay. So I went home, and I decided I'd go to a pet store and get the biggest rawhide dog bone I could find. And I took it home, I threw it in my bathtub, and I soaked it. And then I had this slippery material, and I figured out how to make a rattle. And that began this odyssey of me first healing myself, because that's what I used the rattle on, was myself. And then led me on this journey to this instrument that shakes, and finding out its nuance, because it has many voices. I think that's the interesting thing. The drum does also, but the rattle, there's something magical about it. Like my teacher always said, the drum puts you in your body. It's what gets you inside your body for healing work, for doing the work, and it's the rattle that does the medicine. So it's what vibrates and shakes things up. It's what moves things in and out. You can do surgery with the rattle. You can do all kinds of things with the rattle, which, and I'm still finding out about it. If you had asked me 25 years ago, if you thought I would be shaking the rattle, I would have said you out of your mind. And here I am 25 years later, and I hardly feel like I know anything. So
Right. So when I think of the rattle and shaking the rattle, it reminds me of snake energy. And I don't know why. Does it remind you of snake energy in any way, shape, or form?
It can, because there is a way in which it sort of does. But I also think it's a little more elemental to me, like snake, but also water, the sense of ripples, the sense of moving in a sort of rolling way.
Okay.
And it depends on what's in the rattle, because some rattles I have are quite loud, so they're more like thunderous.
Right.
So and those kinds of, that sound is really about clearing things. It's like really shaking up the body, or shaking up someone's sense of what they think they know about themselves. And I have other rattles that are very quiet, and they're sort of very gentle, and I use those mostly for journeying, because that kind of puts people into that trance, into that theta state, that place where we go into that part of our brain that does dream, that does the retelling the story, or redreaming the dream. So there's that, and then the other part of that with the brain is the delta state, the cellular healing state, and that's when spontaneous healing happens, when we shake the rattle. What we want to do is we want to bring those two states to a point where the body begins to heal itself, and we begin to rewrite the story. Because our life really is about stories.
Right.
It's like the stories we tell us about what we believe about who we are, and also who we believe we are in the world.
Well, and that's really interesting. So then, as another shaman that I know, he plays flute. So he has many, many different types of flutes. So
Mhm.
from what you just said, then you have many, many different types of rattles with different purposes.
Mhm.
So do you happen
Right.
to have any
Mhm.
with you right now?
Um, uh, not within reach.
Not within reach. Oh,
but,
no.
but if you give me a minute, I will get a rattle.
All right, let's do that. Let's do that. Get
All right,
more
I'll be
than
right back.
one.
Okay.
So Dr. Adhi Two Owls is a practicing shaman and healer. Her work and research focuses on sacred tools, like we're saying about the rattle, and the sciences used for transformation. Adhi works to inspire communities to come together to create a better world. So she does her work both on the individual level and the collective level to bring community together. So she's just returning with her rattles now.
All right.
All right.
So I have a. So I can tell you a little bit about what this rattle is, and I have a
Okay.
couple others in there. But this is.
Could you just hold it up just a little bit more so everybody, oh, perfect, perfect. Well done.
Okay. So these are traditional rawhide rattles that I work with. This is actually elk skin. Elk is all about stamina, endurance, sexuality, strength, things like that. The handle of this is yew wood, which is a wood that's all associated with the sun and empowerment and also strength. Burning cleanly, so burning through your inhibitions or the things that keep you trapped in patterns. So I use this a lot for journeying. This rattle I made 2006, so I've had it a long time, about 10 years. Instead of it are beechwood seeds from the beech tree. And beech, if you know about its wood, it grows twisted. And it grows twisted, and that's what makes it such a strong wood. So it's all about being that place of strength, of being grounded in our roots, and also being able to reach very high. Because beech trees grow very big and round. So that's what's embodied in this rattle. And it's actually one of the rattles I use primarily when I do journey work, when I do work with people for taking them to find out a power animal or undoing something in their life, whatever, redreaming. So this is the rattle I use primarily for most of my medicine work. And this is the sound it makes. It's very nice, soft, kind of a swishy sound. So I can see where this would sound like a snake.
Right.
So.
And when you do that, you carry on doing that for a long period of time. In the workshop, you were saying that it takes a certain amount of time. Was it? I can't remember what you said. Was it 20 minutes or?
It's 17 and a half minutes to move into a full theta state.
Right.
So you can do it. You can access it in smaller amounts, like shorter amounts. But if you want to move into a full theta state to do a full sort of experience, you really need to do it about 17 minutes, 17 and a half minutes.
So do you actually, so do you actually produce CDs where people can use the sound of your rattle then to get into this state?
Yeah, I have right now on CD Baby, I actually have a 55-minute recording, and I think it's on my website. So, but yes, I also have some other recordings I've yet to upload, because I'm doing basically a series of different rattles. Like I think the one that's up there right now is this rattle. But I have some other ones which have different sounds, which will access different states of work. So,
do you happen to have another one with you, Ahdi?
Yep, I do.
Just to show the difference.
Okay, so yeah, so this is a different rattle.
Yes.
This rattle has, again, elk skin, and this wood here is cedar. And what's inside of here are little volcanic stones I got from Sunset Crater in Flagstaff, Arizona. And so this one is all about moving through stuff. So this is all fiery energy. It's all about transformation. So when I use this one, I usually don't use this for journeying, but I use this like when I'm working on somebody and I need to clear something, or I need to, move a lot of energy for them. So this one has a very different sound. I'm gonna get it loud for a minute. So this is a very sort of blasting sound. So you think of a volcano, move something very quickly.
So do you do that? I mean, do you go like a steady pattern, and then do you do a pattern interrupter by doing what you just did quite quickly?
Yeah, when I do medicine work, that often is what I do. So like, because you want to move people into that state,
Yeah.
and that, but then you also want to be able to move stuff. Because when people are more relaxed and they're in that theta state, they're more receptacle, they're more receptive to
Yeah.
shifting things. So there's a whole protocol that's involved when you do a healing session. So part of it is getting to know the client, but also moving them into a safe space where they know that the work that's going to happen is going to be transformative in a way that they can shift and move through. Now, it doesn't mean they don't get emotional and they don't have, purging or whatever, but there's a way in which they feel safe within a container.
So how is shamanism, why is it important on the planet this time?
We're at a point right now where human beings, for lack of a better word, really need to get it together. We've been on this discourse or course of separation for a long time. And I think it's really important for shamans in whatever capacity, in whatever tradition we work at, to really begin to make these connections. It's not just about healing individuals, it's about healing communities. It's about waking people up to what's going on, but also not trashing our accomplishments. Because I think there's a place in the world right now for technology. I really think human beings have developed this technology for a reason. So I think all of our smartphones and all of our computers and all of that, that's part of how we're going to heal the planet. And we can see that too. It's like we're having a conversation and we're vastly far apart. And so to me, there's a reason why we have this technology. And so I think part of it is remembering that we're on a learning curve with it, but also knowing that it's part of our grand plan. I think if we look at civilizations in the past, like the Mayans and the Egyptians and stuff, they created technology. We know they did, but in some way, their way of using or not using or not figuring out how to use it didn't help them transform, didn't help them move into whatever the next level is. So I think we have an opportunity to do that right now. If we're not afraid of it or we don't implode in our own sort of human self-sabotaging way.
I think that what you just said is very, very, very powerful. I mean, in studying Mayan shamanism, I really come to the conclusion that full body enlightenment was something that they experienced, or maybe it wasn't so much full body enlightenment. It was like transformative in the sense that they actually shifted dimensions. And so I realized the power of shamanism on the collective community level really can help people transform their consciousness and their culture. And like you say, at this time on the planet, we're not at the level of a civilization that needs to be transformed. We're at the planetary level. This is a planetary transformation. This is the first time that we're being gifted to be able to do this through all cultures, all traditions, all religious beliefs. All of us are on the same stage, ready, and willing, and hopefully willing and ready, able to do this transformation that we're being presented with.
Yeah.
Very exciting times. So, most shaman traditionally worked with cultures and with your own culture. So, how do you work with community? What are some of the ways that you get to work with community?
I try to do a lot of like fire circles, healing circles, moon circles. I try to create reoccurring gatherings where people can come, and I try to have, I think part of it is we can get really ornate with ceremony, and I try to keep ceremony simple and like show up, be here, be present.
Yes.
Be yourself. I mean, a lot of times people come and they're so afraid to be authentic. They're so afraid to be in whatever, I think there's the myth of being in bliss and happiness, that we should all be happy in the world, but we need safe, sacred spaces for people to come into where they can be in their grief, where they can be in their places of transformation, because that's part of the medicine work, ceremony is the gateway. We bring everything we have to that gateway, and the ceremony gives us permission to walk through the gateway to do whatever our next step is. That's what ceremony is about, and we get to share that with community, and we get the support of community when we're there. So, a lot of it is community work. But then there's also just the practical things, rolling up your sleeves. Like, if there's a crisis, you show up, you pick up trash, you hold a picket sign. the power company's doing something you don't like, you
Mm-hmm.
just, those are the kinds of things you show up,
Right.
and whatever the next right thing is, you know. So that's kind of, I mean, to bring it all like home right now, it's like, Haiti right now has been devastated by this hurricane. So right now this morning before I got on here, I was looking for places to send donations, that kind of work. That's part of it too. And then, organizing our community to do something,
Right.
to help people.
So when you do ceremony, do you organize full moon or new moon or solstices and equinox ceremonies? Like, do you have a sort of like a schedule that you created that you're?
I try, because I travel so much, that's often a little awkward, but I try to do full moon circles and sometimes new moons. But also when I travel, I try to do ceremony everywhere I travel. So I usually try to have a fire ceremony if I can. Actually, when I was visiting the Questers, we went on Sunday. Was it Sunday? Yes, we went on Sunday, and we did a water ceremony at the lake. So I always try to incorporate ceremony because I think it's important to bring people together, especially when you have the opportunity with diverse people who might not normally be together,
Right.
to come together with all of our stuff and to do something. I think that's important. And I try to do everyday ceremony, like for myself. Like, I get up in the morning and I light incense, I say a prayer.
Yeah.
I walk where I live. I walk around and I visit all the little sacred places when I'm home. So I think these are important, just having day-to-day ceremonies that we do as an individual as well as community, because that also helps us to embrace the sacred. One of the things I have my apprentices work with is I tell them to find what I call a burden tree, and they go to that tree as often as possible. And they, the part of it being a burden tree is you go and you ask the tree to take something, hold something for you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a note or sometimes it's a little bundle or whatever. But over the course of time, they begin to have a relationship with this tree. They see it through the seasons. They see it growing. They see it's changing. They get to listen to its leaves. They get to have a relationship with something. And that in itself is ceremony, because that's what relationship is about. It's about seeing. Seeing and being aware and being awake and listening. What are the prayers that are being said by these people? What's the medicine being spoken by these elders? What are the trees echoing back to us when we play our drums or we sing? What's the fire saying as it moves up and down, as it gets blown by the wind? When it's really smoking, being a very smoky fire, is it the ancestors telling us to pay attention? So these are the things, that we learn to do. So all of these things are, I guess, they're not just ceremonies, they're exercises in awakening.
Right. So being a traveling shaman, you're on the road a lot. So how does that work? Like, you just get invited here and there, or I mean, how does that happen in your life?
Well, I
or is that
most of the time
that you were talking about, or that, that being,
it takes some planning, because I mean, I do this as a living. I mean, I guess I shouldn't. Yeah, so part of it is, this is how I make my livelihood. So there's conferences I go to. So those happen throughout the year, and then I just get invited. Like I love going to somebody's community and working with them. So usually someone will call me out of the blue and say, or send me an email and say, I heard through so and so you taught this workshop, and we'd really like to have you come. And I'm like, okay, let's see if we can make this work. So I just try to work with people. I think that's that's how you make it happen.
Oh, that's interesting. So do you do sacred journeys as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the sacred journeys that you do? I mean, for me, going to Mayan sacred sites and working with my shaman have been some of the most powerful, transformative experiences I've ever had. So, I mean, traveling together with a shaman is extremely powerful. So do you take your other people, and I'm assuming you take your students as well, right?
Yeah, one of the things I've been doing, for 10 years is there's a barrier island off of Maryland called Assateague, and on there there's wild horses, and it's actually a kind of magical place. It's like a world between the worlds. It's a very tiny island that's windblown, and the ocean, it's like right there. And I went there the first time. I had a very magical experience with a horse, and and I said, I don't know what it's about here, but I have to keep exploring it. So I began to bring students there, and we would have very powerful meditations. We'd have very powerful experiences, like one beautiful mandala with shells and stuff on the beach. And we're there for a week, and it's very rustic. There's no, like, we're all in tents, so if it's raining or whatever, we're in the weather, we're in all of it as it is. So we went out after we had spent the whole week building this. We went out, and it was foggy. We couldn't even see the shoreline. We could just hear the waves. We couldn't see anything. We could barely see each other across the mandala. And we started shaking the rattles around the mandala, and then we stopped, and we were all standing there in the silence. And I looked up, and there was a perfect hole in the fog showing the stars above our mandala. That was one experience. Another experience is we went, and it was terrible weather. Actually, we got blown out the first night. Everyone's camp was flattened. And then we all decided, we're going to stick this out. And it was hard. It was like one of those things where the wind was howling, and everyone was really at the edge of their knowing of themselves and what they thought they could do. But everyone left that experience. One birthed a 600-page book when she got home. Another one moved into another sort of transformative life path, etc. But it was like everyone had very powerful, visceral changes in their life after that. So that's just one that I've gone to. I haven't gone to take anyone to Peru or anything like that. I did go to Egypt, and I taught there. And there were mostly local folk there. I was invited to teach, so I went there for 3 weeks.
Well, we're definitely at the end of the show, unfortunately, and I have so much more questions that I want to ask you. But how do people get hold of you, Adhi? How do they get to work with you? How do they call you?
How do they call me? Well, I have a telephone number, and a smartphone. So you can reach me by phone, and the area code is 267-884-4252. I also have an email, so it's adhizan@gmail.com, and that's ADHIZEN. And you can also reach me on my website, thenewglobalshaman.com, and I'm all the usual places too: Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all of those. You can find me on most social media.
So thank you ever so much for being on the show. It was a great pleasure. And we have to have you back. I want to talk about shamanism and Buddhism. So that will be the next one. So thank you.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Right. Bye-bye.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca. and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.